Imagine stepping into an arena, thousands of eyes fixed on you, screaming for blood. The ground is covered in the dust of the fallen, and standing before you is the opponent who will decide if today is your last day. The question is, are you ready to survive? Many picture gladiators as nothing more than brutal combat machines, men thrown into the chaos of the arena without any preparation. But the reality is far harsher. Survival didn't depend just on strength or luck. Gladiators were forged through suffering, subjected to training so grueling that only the strongest in body and mind would make it out alive. Think about it. They weren't warriors by choice. They were prisoners, humble men, or condemned souls who saw combat as their only chance at freedom. But to earn it, they had to face the unimaginable, endless days of brutal training, punishing blows, and a mental preparation as ruthless as the arena itself. Every session was a battle. Every failed strike was a death sentence. But how did ordinary men become champions of the games? What were the secrets of Rome's most feared trainers? And why did their training go beyond combat techniques, shaping the gladiator spirit to not just face death, but to embrace it? In today's video, you'll discover everything it took to survive as a gladiator. We'll dive into the extreme training, battle strategies, and psychological challenges these men endured day after day. More than that, you'll learn what transformed ordinary men into living legends that captivated all of Rome. If you want to uncover more incredible stories of the Roman Empire and explore the secrets that shaped its power, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you epic content like this and keeps the history of gladiators alive. Imagine being dragged through dark corridors, with the muffled screams of other men echoing off the stone walls. For those arriving at the Ludus, the gladiator school, the illusion of grandeur or heroism shattered in seconds. There was no glorious entrance or motivational speech. Instead, the first experience was a brutal test of survival. Recruits were thrown to the ground, their chains removed with the cold sound of metal, and all eyes turned to them. The Lanisti, the merciless trainers, observed each new man like a merchant inspecting defective goods. Any weakness, physical or mental, was noted. Those who stumbled, hesitated, or showed fear knew they might not survive the day. The first challenge was simple, yet devastating. Endure. Endure hunger. Endure thirst. Endure the blows of wooden sticks that didn't stop until exhaustion set in. Men accustomed to an ordinary life collapsed to the ground, crying or begging for rest. Humiliation was part of the process, not a failure. The goal was clear: separate the weak from the strong, those who could be shaped from those who would never touch a weapon in the arena. Those who survived the first day discovered something terrifying. The suffering had only just begun. For the Lanisti, the value of a gladiator was not in initial strength, but in the ability to endure pain and fear. What was most striking, however, was the gaze of the veterans. Sitting in the corner, men who had already faced the arena watched the newcomers with a mix of indifference and understanding. They had been through the same hell, survived the same chaos. This made it clear: the training was not a one-time test. It was a long, calculated, and relentless process. Those who thought they had already faced the worst still didn't know that the body could be pushed to unimaginable limits. Yet something greater hung in the air. Survival depended as much on the mind as on the body. But what happened after the newcomers survived the initial shock? How did the training transform these ordinary men into gladiators who would make crowds scream in delirium? The answer lay in the unique and contradictory way the Ludus prepared them. One of the greatest ironies of gladiator training was the paradox between life and death. On one hand, they were prepared to kill or die in spectacular battles. On the other, they were forbidden to die during training. Each man was worth money, and the investment needed to return in the form of grand entertainment. Therefore, the training was cruel but calculated. The wooden weapons that seemed simple and harmless weighed more than the real ones. Why? To strengthen the body until the real sword became a natural extension of the arm. Every movement was repeated thousands of times, until instinct took the place of thought. Precision was vital. A single mistake on fight day meant death. The Lanisti transformed ordinary men into fighters with almost choreographed techniques. It was a dance of survival. The use of the short gladius, the firmness of the shield, and the calculated dodges were taught with whips cracking in the air. Any slip-up resulted in severe physical punishments, reinforcing that in the arena, there was no room for failure. But the most curious thing was that the training fights were not just about winning. They were designed to entertain. A gladiator had to prolong the fight, show skill, and keep the audience in a frenzy. A quick victory was less valuable than an epic battle that left everyone breathless. After weeks or months, the recruits began to understand the duality of the training. They learned to attack with brutality, but also to hold back the blow at just the right moment. The goal wasn't the immediate destruction of the opponent, but the spectacle. After all, a gladiator's success depended on his ability to survive, not just to kill. The longer he lived, the more valuable he became. However, there was a more cruel element behind all of this. Even with all the physical skill, it was impossible to survive without absolute mental control. How did the trainers prepare the gladiators' minds to face the terror of the arena? What kind of methods were used to shape men into warriors ready to face death without hesitation? That was the true key to survival, and its brutality went far beyond physical blows. No matter how sharp the blades were or how precise the movements, no training was as brutal as the psychological preparation. In the ludus, the true enemy was not the opponent, but fear. With every training session, the gladiators didn't just fight to perfect their strikes. They fought against the terror of failing under the gaze of their fellow men and, later, under the unforgiving eyes of the crowd. The trainers knew that a man's mind was as fragile as his body and used that weakness as a tool for strength. Every mistake was exposed, every defeat a humiliating spectacle, and there was no room for ego. If a gladiator fell during training, he wasn't helped. He either got up on his own or gave up, and giving up meant being forgotten, a death without glory. Beyond the fear of failure, there was the weight of an inevitable fate. Gladiators were forced to accept that the arena spared no one. Death was a constant presence, as common as the sun that burned the sands of the ludus. But the Lanisti did not allow this to paralyze their men. Instead, they used the certainty of the end as motivation. The motto that echoed through the stone walls said it all: live with honor, die with glory. It was a brutal, almost cruel attempt to condition the gladiators to see death not as a defeat, but as a release or a spectacle that would engrave their names in eternity. This mentality didn't form overnight. Conditioning was constant, often carried out in silence. Gladiators spent hours observing one another, learning not only techniques, but also the behavior of the veterans. Men who had faced dozens of battles rarely smiled or spoke much. They were living statues of discipline, used to staring into the void and accepting pain without resistance. Newcomers quickly realized the real fight began in the mind long before they set foot in the arena. Those who mastered fear were already ahead of any opponent. But even with all the mental preparation, the day of the battle always arrived. The arena was the true test, where physical and psychological training collided with the brutal reality of the spectacle. What separated a common gladiator from a living legend? What secrets ensured that a man not only survived, but earned the admiration of thousands of voices screaming for blood? When the arena gate opened, there were no more trainers, comrades, or whips. There was only the crowd, the opponent, and the weight of the training. Every step in the sand was accompanied by the deafening roar of the audience, who didn't see men fighting, but characters in a theater of death. The gladiator who survived understood that his role went far beyond winning. He needed to impress. Calculated movements, choreographed attacks, and unwavering endurance were expected. The crowd wanted spectacle, not a chaotic battle. So, every strike, every scream, and even the way a man fell were part of the show. However, this pursuit of glory came at a price. Gladiators rarely left unscathed. Their bodies were marked by scars, their joints weakened, and their minds consumed by the constant tension of living between life and death. Those who survived carried a mix of pride and exhaustion. Each victory brought them closer to fame, but also reminded them that, one day, luck could run out. For many, the true triumph wasn't just living to see another day, but being remembered as someone who fought with honor. And the crowd? To Rome, the gladiators were both heroes and prisoners. They represented the brutality and glory of the empire, feeding the insatiable desire for entertainment. The crowd screamed for blood, but never saw the man behind the gladius. The man who, outside the arena, was just a survivor trying to find purpose amidst the suffering. Even the most celebrated champions knew their fame was fleeting. The next fight could erase it in seconds. And then comes the question that echoes to this day. Were the gladiators truly free when they earned victory, or were they still prisoners of the spectacle that made them legends? More than that, what can the story of these men teach us about the cost of a life devoted to survival and spectacle? Perhaps the true battle was never against another man, but against a system that turned suffering into entertainment. If you were captivated by the price of glory for gladiators and the tensions they faced inside the arena, wait until you see what happened outside of it. In the video 10th Legion, the army that achieved the impossible at Alesia, we dive into the power of unshakable loyalty and how the discipline of soldiers like Spurius Ligustinus changed the fate of Rome. Don't miss the chance to understand how the true strength of a Roman warrior went far beyond the arena. Click now to discover how a warrior's spirit shaped the Roman Empire.